Well, thank you for inviting me to this conversation. That's very nice of you.
Yeah,
Thank you. I appreciate.
welcome, Brigitte. It's so nice to have you here and to have you speak about the importance of art to be used in these non-ordinary states to support the preparation, the integration, and the journey itself.
Mhm.
So we are really excited to hear about your new book too, Holotropic Art. Maybe would you like to say anything about what inspired you to create your book?
Well, it's always good to think about your life and sit down. It actually started for me in Prague at the ITA conference, International Transpersonal Association conference in Prague in 2017, because they of course Stan and I were going there, and they said, "Oh, we will have an art exhibition, and would you like?" That they knew we do art. Stan also does art and did art, and so he said, "Oh, sure, let's make participate." And then we choose some pictures each of us, and then they wanted to know the title and the measures and things like that. I had never paid attention to, and then they said, "Oh, and each artist should have a 20-minute presentation." So I was like, "Oh my goodness." I don't have anything to say, 20 minutes. And Stan said, well, wait, once you start to really look at things and deal with them, you will have plenty to say and you will have to cut it down. And he was so right. So I ended up with a almost 1 hour presentation, and I made a PowerPoint, and I was going through my artwork, my old artwork I had from a long time ago, and I just saw this incredible shift that had happened in me and my life and in my art, because I studied psychology, but I also wanted to study art. And I was quite disappointed from psychology in the university because it was not, I felt they were not really dealing with the soul at that time in Germany. And so after I said, no, I need to study art on top of it. And I started. And, it was all about drawing, painting something you see outside. And then, then later I met Stan's books. I found Stan's books and I met him and his wife, Christina, then, and I went to Esselen and started to do the holotropic breathwork and the holotropic way of life and journeying. And then my whole artwork shifted, of course, from painting outside stuff, then expressing what came from within. So that was a huge, huge shift. And and so yeah, that's how I started to look at it. And then of course writing it down was another big experience. But that's why it's called holotropic art, because it comes from holotropic states of consciousness.
Yeah, it's so interesting how you describe that, the difference between art outside of oneself or creating from outside of oneself to creating from within, right? Which is kind of at the root and the soul of art therapy, or really at the root of what we're speaking about too, ways to prepare for and integrate these non-ordinary states using art.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I'm curious, we've been talking about the shadow side, the darker sides of the psychedelic renaissance that we're in right now, and ways that we can actually move more into the light, into supporting us and moving forward in a way that feels safe and ethical. And your work definitely exemplifies that in your book with the use of art and how that supported you. And so I'm curious, why do you think art is such a supportive way to prepare for and integrate these non-ordinary states? And also, I'm curious about working with these transpersonal realms within creative expression. How does that open up the conversation and dialogue further for you?
Well, if part of my book is part of it is my personal path and my art and my development and so on, but the other part is actually a bit, I wouldn't say academic or scientific, but not personal. It's if you look around, really, you find that art has been for thousands of years in the spiritual life of people, and starting with the cave paintings, where in southern France you could find they're 10,000s of years old, and when you look, they can see the shamanic motifs in it, or there was a cave discovered in Menorca where they found some hair uh, that was still there from that time, and they found out that there were psychedelic medicines consumed, So, and you have like the books of the dead. You have like in India, you have the tantric art, you have spiritual art all over the world once you start looking, or you have the tribal art, you have the Aboriginal art. I mean, this is one of the oldest spiritual systems on the planet, or even the oldest, yeah. And then you have the art of the native tribes, the Huichol Indians, the Navajo, and so on, or the rock art. And you have of course the mystics of all religions. Like I've chosen like Hildegard von Bingen, that's a Christian mystic. It's and contemporary artists, of course, but it's always been connected to human life, to this expression. And also you have especially in the tantric Kundalini art, you have like the yantras and so on, the mandalas that people meditate on. That just the looking at the art can open up spiritual processes, and so it's so ancient, and we have forgotten about that. And once you look at it, it's first of all super beautiful, and then to understand these paintings, they are not folkloristic or fantasies. You have to be familiar with the holotropic states of consciousness, which I have to say are beautifully described by Stan. I haven't found anybody who described this wisdom, this modern wisdom, which is actually also the old death rebirth knowledge that is the mystical path we are all on, or should be on. And then once it's connected to a rich imagery that you can experience, and that this you can find in that holotropic or spiritual art. So it's our personal experiences and the experiences of humanity are there, and I think that should be taught in school, to understand the richness of that's around. But you need an understanding and experiences of the level of that psyche to understand. You cannot understand it from a biographical level of life,
Interesting how, as you describe that, like it needs to be understood from that place of a non-ordinary state, is what it sounds like, right? In order to
Yes.
tap into that level of consciousness, which, obviously we're speaking about psychedelics, but we're also speaking about ways to access these states of consciousness without psychedelic medicines, which I believe,
Of course.
we're really kind of focusing in on a harm reduction approach when we offer that. It's like, yes, there are these medicines, people are working to legalize these and have more research done so we understand how this affects the brain. But there's ways that, like you said, Stan so beautifully put this all together in bringing this approach that is ancient of the breathwork to access that. So,
Yes.
yeah. But what I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, there are different methods. Of course, psychedelics are very, very powerful, but also the breath work, the holotropic breath work, or Grof breath work, as we also call it, is a very powerful method. Or people, I mean, there have been like technologies of the sacred, as Stan says, around the world. It's just, again, I mean, thankfully we are, as a Western culture, the interest is rising up, but we just have basically lived in spiritual amnesia, being cut off from that whole area of life and of the psyche, which eventually has led to the destruction of the earth and the environment that we are practicing. I mean, nobody who is familiar with these states of consciousness and the connection that you see between everything that exists, the Mother Earth, the spirit, would destroy what feeds us, what provides life to us. It's you can only do that when you were disconnected from that knowledge. And when I wrote the book, I was actually studying that the breath, the Western culture is the only culture that does not associate breath with spirit. We associate that with physiology, but not with the spiritual aspect. And there are so many techniques and knowledge, pranayama and so on, India and so on, that connect the breath with consciousness and with spirituality. So it's once you get, look at it, it's terrifying, that what we've lost and what we're really about to regain, at least some of us. That's why we're so happy about these therapies or these self-exploration techniques that have been up the last 30, 40 years or so developing, and now the psychedelic renaissance. But also we need to, especially psychedelics, to really use carefully, and it needs a lot of knowledge and guidance. I mean, other cultures, they have their saints, they have their gurus, they have their shamans, and we need to be careful with these powerful tools. And that's why people need good training. And they, again, as I said, I don't want to advertise Stan. Of course, I'm his wife and love him, but I think his way, the way of the Psychonaut, these two books, which are actually one book in 2 volumes, are just a masterpiece of describing these inner travels. So I've tried in my book to take out the most important aspects that would help people understand what I'm speaking about with this holotropic art.
Nice. Yeah, and you've done it so well. Thank you for that offer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it sounds really what we need are these protocols, right? Of ways to support people in these processes of reaching these non-ordinary states of consciousness, but ways to prepare for them and integrate them properly in something that's more structured. Right now, it feels like we're seeing that there could be risks associated with using these medicines or using these states too without proper training or without proper supports in place. It's wonderful to have this time right now, though, with you in order to really talk about moving into the light. Like, how do we use the art now to support one moving forward? And something that continuously comes up for me, I wondered if you could speak to, is the idea of connecting with the inner healer. And Stan speaks about this at length with transpersonal psychology.
Yes.
But also, I feel, and I know I speak about in my book and my trainings about with that harm reduction lens, when we can connect with that inner healer and then create art about that, and then continue that relationship as we move forward in our integration. There's no need to go back for more and more medicine if one is ingesting something from outside of themselves rather than using something like the Grof breathwork. But what would you like to say about that, the inner healer, and how we can use art in order to support that relationship? Because you do it so well in your book too. I was really inspired.
Yes. Thank you. Well, that's a very important subject, which is basically the core of the Grof work. But before I get to that, I would like to speak about getting into the light. It's also very important to encounter the shadow, and also, it's an important part of the path. And that's where the art is fantastic, that you can express these maybe darker pictures. You don't have to keep them inside. You can express them in your process, but also it's great to bring it to the paper. And it's really important for people to understand. People have such, hesitation to use painting or drawing, or say, oh, I can't do it right, I'm not good. That's what they heard in school. And so it's really important that to allow yourself to just express yourself without big thinking. This is, that's not a school class. You don't get bad marks. You don't have to be a super artist. I mean, there are artists who are artists, right? That's clear. Not everybody is an artist. You see the difference, but everybody can express themselves with images. That's really, really important. It's kind of, I would say, like a birthright we all have. Like, everybody should sing, even if they don't do the right tune. They may not go to television with that, but but for yourself, it's just the self-expression is so important. And what you say about the inner healing intelligence, I call it, or we call it, is that in all of us, there is another wisdom or another energy besides the head, you know? And so, of course, again, our culture is a bit much living in the head. And so we have forgotten that that exists. And what we learn in the holotropic work is the psyche gets activated by breathing or psychedelics or whatever. And we just allow what comes from within. In our work, we are not doing it. We are like facilitators. We create a safe space. We know how to deal with problems when they come up. But in general, it's about activating this inner wisdom, this spiritual knowledge, this creativity that has its own energy that's in everybody. And that's why I describe in my book the phenomenon of Kundalini. So again, this is old knowledge, you know. The spiritual cultures know that. They know about that. And it's for us to learn again that exists, and for the therapists or facilitators to learn how to experience it themselves, and also how to assist other people who go through that process. And it's everything, you know, and that's why it's best in doing artwork is not to have any intention, because then like we do that in the sessions. We tell people don't have any intention, because that's such a creative process that's way bigger than what you can think in your head. You cannot imagine what's going to happen. You know, it's ridiculous to have a plan and trying to control this process. And I'm always again amazed by my own experiences. And also I just had a big workshop with 30 people with the colleagues. It's so amazing the beauty that is in people and can come out, you know, the spirit, the beauty, the creativity is just so exciting, you know. And so that's also what comes out in the art. And the art, it's very good when you have had an experience, first of all, to complete it well, and then also to bring it to the paper, you know, and then best document when it was, and maybe write a little bit on the back or so, and collect these paintings or drawings, whatever it is. So I have, over the years, I think it's like 20 or even 30 years, I have these kind of diaries, which are like big books with blank paper in it. And after each experience, I put the date, I say what it was, and I describe it, and then I make a little drawing and write down the main sentences that were there. And so over the years, I can really see the whole development. It's very, very interesting. I highly recommend that kind of journaling for inner travels. It's fantastic. You know, sometimes you think, and I'm always amazed about myself when I do these little drawings. I go, oh my God, I chose this color, you know, oh wow. I didn't think about it. And so this is one thing I do art. And the other thing is that what I have observed, that I call that primary holotropic art. You kind of basically protocol your experience. And the other holotropic art I call a secondary holotropic art. I've created these expressions because what I observed in myself, when I went to university to study art, soon I had met Stan and Christina. I went to Esalen, so for a while I was going back and forth, and then I knew I had to give up the art studies because, you know, what was happening in California and the holotropic work was just more interesting, I have to say. And so I didn't get the artistic training that I would have liked, you know. I didn't get the 5 years of super training. And so my art is kind of, it's a little more primitive or something like that, or basic. It's kind of, you know, a little bit like shamanic art or the art of the Southwest and so on. But it does come from a level of my psyche. It's not like portraying a certain experience. It's just generally coming from a level of the psyche that I would not be able to access if I had just studied art and not done these inner processes, you know. And then also I can observe that there are certain themes that show up again.
Mm.
And so it's important I don't have an intention, you know,
Yes.
and that's also the concept of higher creativity
Mm.
that I describe. Yeah.
You had mentioned too about, it's not necessarily about what you're creating, right? Which is kind of at the basis of art therapy. Of therapeutic art really
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
we're asking our left brain, our psyche to just, or more our left brain, our thinking mind to get out of the way
Yeah.
so that we can tap into an unconscious state and just
Yeah.
allow that to come forward without thought. And
Yeah.
um, you mentioned about that 5 years of art training, and I know
Mm.
working with different levels of artists, it can be really difficult to get out of our left brain, our thinking mind, when we've had that type of training, right? And so, in order to allow
Yeah.
that magical piece of the inner healer, of
Yes.
the inner self to
Yes.
come forward, it feels like that's really the only way. I love how you described that you've done that.
Well, ideally, I would have all the skills and let them go. That would be the ideal way, and let them go and access this inner level. But you know, nothing is ideal. So I'm very grateful that I can do that, and I also super grateful that I met my teacher and mentor, where I go, you know, basically every Monday in a group, and he has nothing to do with all that holotropic stuff, but he does have that same attitude, you know, no intention. And with him, I really, being there in this company and working in this kind of spirit, I felt I was liberating my inner artist, which was trapped before. And I also describe it in my book. You know, the higher creativity, that's the creativity that comes from these places where you don't think, you suddenly get inspiration. Or you know, many musicians said, I didn't make that music, I just wrote it down, like Mozart or Wagner or so. They all knew that, you know, it's kind of the divine speaks through them.
Mhm.
They're just like the carrier. They're not the creator. The creation speaks through them. They
Yeah.
just see it, or they hear it and write it down, things like that. And so that's the real creativity. Without the connecting to the great spirit, the divine, this energy, you cannot create really, really great things. And so for me, I mean, I'm not, you know, I'm not as in that category, but it's a little smaller.
I'm curious too. You've been working with non-ordinary states of consciousness and supporting others for so many years. What are maybe some themes that you've noticed within the artwork? And I know in holotropic or in Grof breathwork, you're using mandalas too, right? And I know that started years back with the work of Joan Kellogg, an art therapist that Stan had been working with.
Yeah. I mean, I give the people the option if they want to use a circle or if they want to go free, you know.
Okay.
So it's both possible. So you mean I see motifs in people's paintings, or
You notice, are there themes that show up for people during either preparation or integration that stand out for you? Or maybe even in your own experiences? Um,
well, as I said, in my own experiences, there are certain themes that come back. So over the time, I observe them, and I have certain motifs that keep coming back. They seem to belong to my soul.
uh,
That's what I can say. And for good, the people in the workshops, everything can come, you know. They have their biographical birth, death, or spiritual experiences. Anything can come. It depends a lot on the person, or past lives, or things like that. So,
okay.
but we don't really do it as preparation. We do it after the experience, and then they all bring their paintings to the group and share it with the group.
Okay.
And when we had at Esalen, we had months-long seminars. And so you were there for 4 weeks and 2 sessions a week as a breather and 2 as a sitter. So we would make these rows on the wall that
Um,
the mandalas you put under, so you could see the whole storyline over a month. It was really great to observe.
that would be wonderful to see that progression, right? To have that kind of
Yes,
long,
yes,
experience. And that's such a
yes,
beautiful place as Esalen as well.
Yes, yes.
And what about, I'm curious about the idea of the therapist as the helper, right? How can therapists help keep their own ego in check? That's kind of become a theme where a lot of people may be running to these medicines to, or different trainings to bring people into a non-ordinary state of consciousness because it creates such a huge shift. But what we're also sometimes seeing is that some people may be not able to keep their ego in check with that, or maybe feeling like their role is more than a helper. Do you
Mhm.
want to talk about that at all, or?
Well, I've known Stan since 40 years and I live with him, and he's the kindest and most egoless person I know. And so I've had that chance as, yeah, I was 26 when I met him and Christina. And so I hadn't had any other psychology training. So in that, it's a bit like the artist that has learned too much and has to unlearn. I had nothing to unlearn. I immediately started this kind of work. And so I immediately saw that it's so deeply rooted in his attitude to know that this comes from within the psyche of the person. I mean, when he started out, the LSD first, I had another book which is called Stan Grof, LSD Pioneer. I made that for his 90th birthday, and it's an interview I made with him about, I asked him, so how did your attitude, how did your work change over the more than 60 years you worked with LSD and holotropic states? And he said, in the beginning, they didn't know what it was, and they thought it was pharmacology. It was like a pill. And soon he found out, oh no, the same person can have two completely different experiences with the same dosage, or, so it comes from within. It's not the pill. So it's just like an activation of the psyche, and you just follow what comes. And that, well, first of all, he's humble by nature, but second of all, he just saw that this was the most realistic way to deal with these experiences and with this energy, and follow it, and just know that if there is a difficult situation, how you deal with it. If somebody feels they're choking, or they get scared, or, kind of all kinds of things can happen, get sick or whatever, or they have a big blockage or pain. That's how he developed a certain kind of body work to release things and so on. So basically the work was teaching him the attitude, okay? And when I work with people, I say, you get chef treatment here. It's not me, I'm just a nurse. The chef is the divine energy.
Nice.
God, the divine is the chef, and it's within you. And it's so empowering for people, not there is not this expert who tells you what to do or not. And it's here. I can feel it. I can go with it. It's guiding me from within. We are not guiding people. The guide is inside, and it's like I tell people, it's like listening. You learn to listen. You learn to listen and to follow the energy. The energy is the teacher. The divine energy is the teacher. It's the healer, the teacher, the creator. Yeah. So that's what this work is about. And people who do numbers with it, they have not understood the true nature of this work, in
Thank
my opinion.
Thank you. I think it's really important to name that. I love the way you describe that as the teacher is the divine, really, or it's within. It's not the person who's sitting with you, and how important that
Yeah.
is in order for us to stay grounded within the work when we're doing our own personal work, but also
Mhm.
as helpers and guides and therapists when we're supporting others to know
Mhm.
that, yeah, we're just the nurse.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that.
When I do my work, I mean, I work like this in my private practice also, and so sometimes I get tempted. I want to be great, of course everyone wants to be great, so I want to be a great therapist. And so you can easily get into a neurotic dance. You have a great therapist and a great patient. So you get into this dance of greatness. But when I realized that what I even like better than being a great therapist, to be a free therapist is much better. If I can be free, the person can be free. The
Yeah.
client can be free. So I like that much better than being great. I mean, I like being great too, but being free is even better. So I like freedom. And also I'm a bit lazy. And so it's very good for me, this work, because I don't have to know what's going on. I just sit there,
Mm.
and because the person knows. Who am I to know what's
Yeah,
going on with the
holding
person?
the
I mean,
space and allowing the process to happen, trusting that process too, and trusting one's
yeah.
inner strength and power that that is going to lead them. I think that's so important.
And I do know what to do when somebody gets in trouble. I can support them, that they can continue the flow of the process. That's important because you can get into very challenging waters going on these journeys. It's not a Sunday walk, and it's important also that people who are taking care of people in these states do their own inner work. They continue, because if you really go through these states, you become humble because your ego gets crushed. And if you haven't done that properly, then you can get into, bad behavior. But normally the the substance will teach you who you really are,
Mhm.
hopefully.
Hopefully, hopefully, yes. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Brigitte, for being here today and sharing all the wisdom and knowledge and everything you're putting out there in the world. And big thank you to and hello to Stan. Please give him our best.
Oh, yes,
And
I do. I do. I do. Well, he is just amazing. I mean, I said to him, how could you have the courage to deal with this medicine, not knowing what it was, I mean, you feel like you're dying, you go crazy, things like that. And on the people that he worked with, and he just said, I'm just so curious. And that's what he is. And I think I've learned from him that doing these outrageous things, this outrageous work, which is really amazing, he's always been so grounded and so clean and so clear and so I mean, you have all these situations or many situations out there where people do, molest people and something in sessions or so. I mean, he has such integrity, such ethics in his, and that's what is so important, that people do that to keep that work going, this beautiful, important work going, that they have a really great ethics and support people and don't harm them.
yeah,
That's really important.
absolutely. Yes, thank you for that. It sounds
Yeah.
like too, kind of at the root of that is this humble curiosity too, that we're all learning from one another, that we're all connected.
Mm,
This idea
mm,
too that you described at the beginning,
mm.
how can we not respect our planet and our earth and know that we are all working together here to survive and to
Yes,
thrive. And so
yes.
in that space there
And
is harm.
that's yeah, and also that's what I love about the Grof work, is that you always work with a sitter. You switch the role. One day you are make the experience, and you have a sitter. You have somebody sitting with you the whole time. Even if it's a group, the breath work is done always in pairs. It actually happened by accident when Stan and Christina had a big workshop in Esselen, like 40 people from all over the world. He was working in the garden and lifting a part of a tree, and his back went out. And so imagine to have such a group with bodywork and everything. And so they said what to do. So they said, well, let's pair up the people so they can help each other a little bit. We don't have to do all the work. And then people loved it so much. So you have like the breathwork session, which has facilitators, of course, but you have an extra person who's only there for you. And the next day you switch that role. And that is so incredible. First of all, almost everybody has abandonment issues. So, to have somebody handy there when you need something, and also to sit for somebody, to give the grace, the loving attention, and the person doesn't have to perform anything. Many people say this has been a fantastic experience, even sometimes bigger than the breathwork experience. So we also think it's so important in psychedelic sessions or groups that there are sitters, that everybody has somebody of their own. Also the switching of the roles, then you don't become expert, you become the patient again. That's very good
Mhm.
to balance. It's a big balance, very healthy, so we recommend that.
Okay, okay. Well, yeah. And it's very powerful, as you're in one of those sessions to open your eyes or to feel the hand of someone who's been with you that whole time, that reparative
Yeah.
piece that's happening. And so
Yes,
we'll have
yes,
a
it's very healing, very healing and very sweet, to have somebody there. It's really important. So,
Well, yeah, I highly recommend the Grof training for anyone, breathwork training for anyone interested in exploring
yeah,
non-ordinary states of consciousness in a way that is beyond psychedelic medicines too, right? It's
yes,
not always about
yeah.
the
We have the new training. It's called the Grof Legacy Training. Maybe you can show the link so if people are interested. That would be great.
I'll put a link there, and there's a link too for your book, your new book. You said
Wonderful.
it was just translated in German and Spanish is coming out, and
Yes.
languages.
So exciting. It's so exciting. Yeah, I'm happy.
Great.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And so our connection is very exciting. And I also like your book very much. So we're on the way
On
together. That's nice.
Thank you. Thank you, Brigitte. Okay.
Thank you.